Tonight, more bloodshed in Mexico. Another journalist killed this week.
As we see, that camera person just got
Our
shot.
job is to report the news, not fabricate it.
Correct.
That's the government's job.
I don't care if you don't.
Okay, I'm down. Right? With 90% bullshit.
Can you stay kind of who are fake news?
Famous fake news at this point.
One needs to pay to speak the truth.
Fake news.
Always about silencing the
Choice,
target.
but fuck it, I quit.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. How you guys doing tonight as we talk about what's going on in the world? Hi, Debbie Martin. Hi, Tia. Hi, Nana. Hi, Debbie Rogers. Hi, Richard. Hi, Teresa. Happy Friday, people. Hopefully you guys are preparing for what could unfold because we never know. Hi, of course, Karen, and hi, Jeff. Hi, Sarah. Oh, you're cutting hair. Oh, cutting hair. Have fun. Have fun. Hopefully you guys are all having a good time out there, though. Of course, everything going on. Definitely appreciate you guys. Hi, Hank. You guys coming in. But what's the point of being a superpower if America doesn't defend itself like one or protect its borders? As Iran-backed terrorist groups have escalated their attacks against U.S. soldiers and American interests in the Middle East since, of course, the Hamas invaded Israel. Washington, of course, response to the aggression can only be characterized as a disappointment at best, dangerous incompetence at worst. Let's be honest, it's more towards the dangerous and incompetent side. The U.S. must respond to protect American lives and maintain American credibility to its allies and restore Washington's deterrent towards its enemies. Let's be honest, we're watching things unfold that are at an alarming rate. And all of this is happening because the U.S. is not responding. U.S. soldiers are being targeted over 7 times just between March 29th and October 6th by Iran-backed terrorist groups. The figure has ballooned exponentially to more than 61 attacks on U.S. troops since October 7th. The most dangerous and escalatory behavior, however, has come from Houthis from Yemen. Of course, just back on the 19th of November, Houthis attacked the Bahamas-flagged Galaxy Leader cargo ship that took 25 members hostages. Emboldened by America's lackluster response, of course, the Houthis launched drone and missile attacks at 3 commercial vessels connected to 14 countries in the Red Sea, including a U.S. destroyer. This is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, the embassy being attacked in Iraq, all this unfolding. Yeah. $5,000 Visa gift card, a plane ticket to anywhere, and free housing and food, plus a monthly stipend of I think it's $2,200 a month that they're getting right now, on top of their food and housing budget and medical. This is crazy. Our borders are not secure. We're allowing immigrants in with an alarming rate, giving them $2,200 a month on top of getting free housing, free food, free medical. All this, of course, why we're not even standing up for our fellow countrymen out there fighting and defending our country's will in the Middle East. Over 61 attacks, and yet we have done nothing in direct retaliation. All with appropriate responses and a full coordinated with its international allies and partners, the U.S. has done nothing. We must redesignate the Houthis as a terrorist organization and declare war. Declaring war against Israel and firing ballistic missiles at a Jewish state from more than 2,000 kilometers away. Watching Saudi Arabia now standing with Russia. All this happening because Washington is just weak at this point. Our country is weak in the world. Russia has been tough towards its partners, especially Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, but soft against its enemies. This is ridiculous, watching this. We're not going to end up in peace anytime soon, especially with this government in place. The failure to respond to missiles launched, killing civilians and everything else, and attacking our military infrastructure in the Middle East is ridiculous. All this unfolding. And we wonder why the world is not at rest. Why the world is so on edge. Yeah, they're watching us and just saying, I guess this is the way it's going to go from now on. U.S. forces are being targeted personally at this point, and the consequences are going to get more grave as Iran and its terror networks continue to test U.S. and partners until America reminds them of who it is. Each act of aggression that goes unpunished is not interpreted as a restraint, but as weakness. This instigating an aggressor to increase its frequency as in attacks and raise the intensity of their attacks as well. Allowing American enemies to do all this and escalating has failed miserably in the Middle East. It also failed in every other theater from the South China Sea to Ukraine. When people act in bad faith, especially those who manipulate their way of obtaining what they want through appeasement or resort to aggression. And of course, this aggression being unmet, U.S. deterrence not being held to the highest standard, America's enemies won't feel so confident in engaging in escalatory conduct if we actually did what we said we were going to do. And in fact, if Iran's terror network weren't escalating, of course, the Israel and Saudi Arabia would still be on the road to normalizing relationships. But of course, it's not happening. The U.S. isn't stepping in. We're not doing anything to stop this from happening. We're allowing our soldiers to be attacked by no bounds, no accountability. Watching tankers and ships getting hijacked left and right. Iran missiles pointed at the most cities in the Gulf right now. This is crazy. All this unfolding. We have North Korea raising their escalatory threats now as the space race soars for North Korea, declaring a declaration of war threat sparks fears amongst ongoing satellite skirmish. North Korea has issued a direct threat now stating that if anything happens to their satellites or spy satellites that they have launched, that it will be considered a direct attack even if the U.S. were to do it, and they will retaliate in kind. Going into a space war, launching or destroying satellites back and forth would be terrible because it would end up taking out all the satellites very quickly as debris fields would grow exponentially. The U.S. embassy in Baghdad being struck with several mortars as attacks escalate today. We're seeing what happens when the U.S. does not respond to terror. I hate to say this, approximately 7 mortars landed in the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad early today, as U.S. military, of course, has been told us, and what appears to be the largest attack in recent memory. U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria are also being targeted with rockets, drones, at least 5 more times today. 3 separate times at separate bases in Syria, twice, of course, in Baghdad. The U.S. Defense Department does nothing. Nobody's afraid of anybody anymore. Why should they be? We're not doing anything to stop them. We're not reacting. We're just letting it happen, saying, oh, well. Attacks on U.S. ships and vessels are on an increase. Now we're watching attacks directly on military forces increase exponentially. And everybody wonders why. Washington is basically backing Israel against the war on Hamas and Gaza, which is great. But also we got to watch what's happening on the forefront there. As today, Israel troops, of course, rounded up Palestinian men, not Hamas, Palestinian men in Gaza, as UN, of course, aid operations in tatters there. Images coming through of stripped, blindfolded, and humiliated Palestinian men being detained by Israel forces in Gaza. You can see, of course, photos that I've seen, I'm not sharing. You can see men wearing nothing but underwear as they kneel in a line, surrounded by soldiers in full combat gear, wielding guns, looking like they're about to be executed. They're wearing blindfolds. Dozens of men, of course, in this photo that I see. Detained by Israeli soldiers. We don't know, of course, if they were executed or not. We know this image looks like it's about to be a clear execution. There is no proof whatsoever, or no, even Israel at this point, not stating that they were Hamas, they were just Palestinian men. That's what Israel's stating in the image. Didn't say they were executed or not, but that's what it looks like. I mean, these images are going to go global. And this is what we're backing. And it looks like we're really backing an assault on any Palestinian, period. I mean, yes, Hamas is a terrorist or terrible terrorist organization, and the U.S. needs to step in. But watching these images go public is just bewildering at this point. It's crazy. It's not a photo op. This photo is legitimate. I wish, I'm not going to share it. I want to say, I will put the image in chat. All these men were stripped of their clothing, blindfolded. There's several images that went online. I'm sure you can find them if you look at any reputable news source that's going to be putting them out. I don't know if they are at this point. But like the UN resolution for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, demanding an immediate, by many nations, demanding immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, as of course southern Gaza citizens are being bombed on the roads. You know the only country to veto it? The only country to stand up and veto was the United States. As the UN resolution backed by many nations demanding the immediate ceasefire or humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza was only vetoed by the U.S. We're watching U.S. attacks on U.S. soldiers increase. Meanwhile, the U.S. government isn't doing anything to counter those attacks. We're not attacking back. Basically, they're looking for something to happen where it's so dramatic that the U.S. citizens call for an all-out attack, an all-out war. I think that's what they're pushing for, to see a U.S. base get hit so hard that United States citizens then call for war. And I hate to say that, but I think that's what's unfolding here. I think this is a psychological warfare. Psychops. I think it's very including of what's going on in our government, showing that obviously our government has no bounds for U.S. soldier or U.S. soldiers that are over there fighting, that they want war. We know at least 6 attacks. The one on the embassy, 2 in bases in Iran, 3 in bases in Syria. Those are the ones for sure that have been publicly acknowledged. I think they're wanting to see a big war. And the only way they can get the American people on board with the war is if there's a devastating attack on U.S. infrastructure or military. And it's completely unacceptable. We should be retaliating for the first attack. Whether how small or big it is, any attack on U.S. troops or U.S. personnel and U.S. citizens should be held to the highest standard and retaliation. Those attacks should happen immediately, targeting those people involved in the attack. I don't know how else to be clear about this. Not doing this is obviously a sign that they want to see bigger attacks. Because not reacting is basically saying America is too weak to do anything about it. And that's what these people are thinking at this point. And this is unfolding in the real world. This is unfolding in our lives right now. And I see World War III happening anytime now between what's happening in Russia, what's happening in the Middle East. They want this. The United States government wants war. We may be saying that we're strong. The U.S. strongly supports a durable peace in the Middle East, but we don't. It's obvious we don't. Because peace means accountability. Because when people attack our soldiers that are fighting in foreign lands, and we do not immediately strike those targets down, it is nothing more than inciting them to do it again. Basically begging them to do it again. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy that there's no willingness in Washington for actions to be had. None. Troops are sitting ducks. That's what they are. They're sitting ducks. They're nothing more than a pawn being used by the U.S. government right now. I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. If we're going to stay in the Middle East, we need to defend our troops in the Middle East. That means if a base gets attacked, we immediately react to that attack and take out any known instigators. Period. It is ridiculous. It is, watching this unfold. And I feel terrible for our soldiers over there. I feel terrible for our men and women that signed up to fight for our country and defend our liberties and sovereignties, that are forced to sit in a base over there and be attacked, and nobody's being held accountable. Absolutely insane. All this unfolding. So what is America? How can you still consider America a superpower if America doesn't defend itself like one? We don't defend our borders. We don't defend our citizens. We don't defend our military. We allow strikes on our military with no repercussions at this point. Are we still a superpower? Are we even one of the top powers in the world? Doesn't look like one. Looks like a sad state of affairs unfolding in one country. Country that doesn't respect its citizens, doesn't respect its soldiers, doesn't respect its interests. Only thing they care about is how to make the most money. And making money means going to war. And being dangerously incompetent at what's happening. The U.S. needs to respond to protect American lives and maintain America's credibility and restore Washington's deterrence towards its enemies. It needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Not 3 weeks from now, not a year from now, not when we get another president in office. It needs to happen immediately. Because we will not have a country if this continues. Sad as that sounds. This unfolding, of course, in these events that just keep leapfrogging one after another. I mean, watching just this week, we've seen Saudi Arabia's crown prince sitting there praising Putin, agreeing with him on cutting oil productions. Nowhere in the media. You don't see it anywhere. You see U.S. soldiers getting attacked. No retaliation. U.S. embassies getting attacked. No retaliation. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Terrorist groups now know that America is weak, seeing that America's interests in the Middle East are none at all. We're just basically sitting there, we're sending soldiers in for target practice. This is ridiculous. The State Department needs to immediately act. If the president is not going to act, the U.S. State Department must. Somebody needs to do something. Because this failed administration, the failed to respond to the terrorist groups bombing U.S.-led coalition forces, emboldened by the lack of consequences. I mean, it's launching missiles directly at the U.S. consulates in every country, not just the ones we're seeing, like the ones they're talking about, but it's happening throughout the Middle East. I mean, what about what happened at the terrorist attack in Abu Dhabi and the international airport just last year, killing 3 and injuring 6? Those acts of aggression went unpunished. The terrorist groups that, of course, are serving interest and gnawing away at the U.S. credibility are destroying not just the U.S. credibility in a war against terror, but an actual war at this point. I don't know where this is going to lead us. I don't know where it's going to end up. But it is sad. And it's a sad shape of events that we're seeing and hearing about. I know you guys hate that I always have to talk about what's going wrong. But Biden needs to respond on these Houthian attacks, on these terrorist attacks on U.S. troops. If he's not going to respond to the attacks on freighters and shipping vessels, and these are direct attacks on U.S. bases. Now, a response needs to happen immediately. Not aid for Ukraine, not aid for Israel. We need to initiate actual retaliatory attacks against these people, against these bad actors, to make them know the U.S. is standing up. We don't need to send aid to Israel. If we're going to send aid to Israel, we need to put boots on the ground in Israel. We don't need to call it a war because it's another war on terror, but we'll be fighting along with the Israelis. But to secure our interest. Right now, we just look like a bunch of jokes. We don't punch anything back. You punch the U.S., we sit there and lay on the ground and cry. That's what's happening now. And that's what the world's seeing. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous what's unfolding. And the U.S. not doing anything just shows our weakness. Oh, it's just crazy. God bless you guys. God bless America, I don't know what else to say. It's disheartening. Things need to happen, and things need to happen fast. Until we have a government that's prepared to act, our country is no longer, I can't even consider us the top 20 nations in the world because we don't act like one. When we're not willing to defend our own soldiers or let them defend themselves, even, then what are we? Because that's what we're left with. God bless you guys. God bless America, of course. We'll see you guys Monday. Unless something crazy breaks out, which who knows at this point, because the U.S. isn't going to do anything about it. U.S. isn't going to do anything about anybody trying to do anything to us. We're just going to let it happen. We're going to roll over and say, well, we hope we make it. But good night. God bless you. If you're able to donate, please do. We definitely appreciate it. God bless you all, and have a great weekend.